Ladies and gentlemen, please stand up for the arrival of the Honorable Philip Edwards David, KC Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Muy buenos días. Bom dia. My name is Mercy Correa, ALTA's Head of Industry Relations, and I am honored to welcome you to the 20th edition of ALTA's AG and Airlines Leaders Forum, recognized as the largest leadership event in Latin America and the Caribbean. It has been a benchmark for the growth of the sector in the region. And that's why we're here today, to foster an open and constructive dialogue between executives from major airlines and government authorities. We would like to start with some important announcements. We have simultaneous translation available for English and Spanish. If needed, the devices are available at the entrance of the room. Contamos con servicio de traducción simultánea para inglés y español. En caso de necesitar, los auriculares se encuentran a la entrada del salón. In the unlikely event of an emergency situation, please remember the emergency exit doors are located at the back of the room. We invite you to download the app of the conference, where you will find the updated agenda, floor plans, and all details of the event. We would also like to follow ALTA on its social media on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube, and to use the hashtag ALTAForum on all your posts. On behalf of ALTA, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our host airline, Bahamas Air, our official host, Ministry of Tourism, Investment, and Aviation of the Bahamas, and thank you to all of our sponsors and exhibitors for your support. To start with the agenda, I would like to invite on stage the President of ALTA's Executive Committee and CEO of LATAM Airlines, Roberto Albo.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much for coming to this very important event. I'd like to welcome you and all the authorities present in this very important conference. I'd also like to thank Bahamas Air for hosting us in this event, and in particular to Tracy Cooper, his CEO, who's been relentlessly working to have the opportunity to have us all here in this very important moment. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the ALTA Leaders Forum. It's a very important moment, a good moment to reflect upon what the industry has done over the last 20 years. Between 2004 and 2024, the number of passengers that have been carried in Latin America has grown by 3.6 times. This is an amazing achievement, and ALTA expects that this year 480 million passengers will fly within the region and to the region. In this period, aviation has increased its presence in GDP by 53% and has directly and indirectly created hundreds of thousands of jobs, while at the same time has made air travel significantly more affordable. ALTA estimates that during these 20 years, airfares have fallen by 50% as billions of dollars have been invested in fleet, operating improvements, and technology. And at the same time, this industry has become significantly more efficient in terms of emissions, reducing its emissions by 31% by RPK. I think these are amazing results. But despite these achievements, aviation is still underdeveloped in our region. In 2023, on average, only 0.65 passengers per inhabitant flew within Latin America. This is a third or a fifth of what we see in developed economies. In a region of long distances, often measured in thousands of kilometers, with poor road infrastructure, with immense geographical barriers such as mountains, deserts, jungles, and oceans, the necessity for air travel is clearly evident. However, despite these important achievements, the industry's profits are still meager. It's a mere, on average, $1.9 per passenger. This is equivalent to only 5% of the cost of jet fuel. Isn't it amazing how, despite of all these efforts, still our profits are so meager? And as we face the next 20 years, I think it's an important moment to reflect on the challenges that we see that this period will bring. Long-term traffic projections for the industry, measured by Airbus and Boeing, estimate that this industry will grow by 5% per year over the next 25 years. This means that by 2050, this industry will be triple in the current size. However, given these important achievements, it still means that many of the people that fly within Latin America have never taken a flight. Approximately 80%, 4 of 5 people that live in this region have never taken a flight. Now, as we think about this growth, I think it's important to reflect on the challenges we have in the future. I would like to mention 3. First, our region has always faced a chronic deficit on adequate infrastructure. Airport access, airport terminal, and air traffic control infrastructure has been lacking. Today, ALTA estimates that 54% of our flights to the region operate on congested or severely congested airports. Secondly, cost and taxation. IATA Fuel Price Monitor estimates that the region with the most expensive jet fuel in the world is Latin America. Brazil, for example, is only surpassed by India as the country with the most expensive jet fuel in the world. And on the other hand, Colombia, for example, has a level of taxation that implies that more than 60% of the cost of the fare goes in taxes. These are not well-designed public policies that have hampered the growth of our industry in a place where people need it the most because of the geographical challenges that we face. These are 2 well-known challenges. Now, I think we're facing a third that is important to mention. And this one is a new endeavor. It's called decarbonization. We're well aware that this industry is one of the most difficult industries to abate in terms of CO2 emissions. Latin America is one of the richest regions in terms of biodiversity. 25% of the species in the world live in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 6 of the 10 largest, most biodiverse countries are also in our region. Latin America and the Caribbean are in a great position to becoming a producer of carbon services to allow for the help of organizations. It is well understood, as we've seen everywhere, that sustainable aviation is becoming the best alternative, albeit not only the only pathway to achieve the commitment made by the Paris Agreement, which is also being supported by the industry. SAF, however, is expensive, currently costing more than twice what jet fuel costs. It's scarce, and its production at scale, it's still uncertain. Its adoption, therefore, it is not only slow, but currently unaffordable in sizable cities, even if they were available. And currently, Latin America and the Caribbean has no production of SAF. So in this context, where still 80% of the population, as I mentioned, has never flown, and despite the tremendous progress made of reducing our CO2 emissions by RPK by 30%, we face a difficult task, and we need to find the delicate balance between emission reductions with the necessity of development of air travel at affordable prices and the consequential impact, beneficial impact that that has on the economy. In this context, LATAM Airlines, together with Airbus, funded an almost 2-year-long study which was conducted by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, with the aim of understanding the possibilities of producing SAF in the region and the impact that SAF consumption and carbon pricing would have on air travel and the economic development in general. The study that has been presented and will be presented in ALTA in this occasion will be made public as well soon. And I think that that study brings a few important conclusions that are relevant to us going forward. First, that certain countries in Latin America and the Caribbean have unique and tremendous opportunities of producing large quantities of SAF in an efficient manner, while others not necessarily will face those conditions. Second, that even in the best case production cost scenario, consumption by SAF by 2050, consistent with European standards today, would imply a significant drag on the expected 5% growth in the region, with the consequences to connectivity and to the development of the economies that we all understand. It is becoming obvious that increased price will be transferred to ticket prices and would affect principally the people that can afford it the least. That would multiply the social and economic impact. And thirdly, the study reflects that a region-wide carbon market would decrease the impact of these measures, taking advantage of low-cost, large-scale productions in countries like Brazil and Colombia. That unification of the carbon market will allow us to continue the path of decarbonization together with offsets in a way that hampers traffic in a much less significant manner. And for this reason, ALTA is announcing today that it will fund a study to define the regional map for decarbonization, one that takes into consideration local conditions and possibilities for offsetting, efficiency improvements on the operations, SAF production, with the aim of informing public policies that we expect will allow us to transition to a more efficient and cleaner industry. We're also very pleased that both CLAC and IATA have announced their support for this initiative. As I stand here today and look forward to the next 20 years, and being very proud of the developments we have been able to achieve in the past 20, I cannot feel less than proud of all the work done by the leaders and the people that work in this industry. I'm also very pleased that in particular ALTA has been taking the leadership in this endeavor. It's a testament to what this industry can do and the development we can bring to the economies. I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and I expect and I hope that you have very fruitful next couple of days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberto. Now please welcome Dr. Kenneth Romer, Director of Aviation and Deputy Director General of Tourism, Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
The Honorable Philip Edward Brave Davis, Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Commonwealth of the Bahamas, the Honorable Basil McIntosh, Minister of State for Aviation, President Roberto Jose Batil, very good friend, CEO of ALTA, Director General, Ministry of Tourism, Investments and Aviation, Latia Duncombe, our board chairman, ladies in their respective places, Tanya Pratt, Bahamas Air Paul Bevins, and also Chairman Role, Mr. Tracy Cooper, the Managing Director of Bahamas Air, colleague, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, and especially persons who have joined us now from across Latin America, the Caribbean, inclusive of the Bahamas, our virtual audience, and in one word, we call all of you family. días, mi familia. Bienvenido a las Bahamas. And like you said, I wanted to always say this, I was now speaking English. Good morning, my family, and welcome to the islands of the Bahamas. I welcome you here today, not really as delegates or participants, but we really welcome you here today as family, because that is who we are really in the aviation ecosystem. Our bonds transcend and defy geographical, socioeconomic, demographic, and even political divides. And we collectively continue to demonstrate to the world that we need paving the runway for development. An ecosystem that brings value to Latin America and the Caribbean, Bahamas inclusive. As we continue to explore key subjects around regional competitiveness, innovations, sustainability, connectivity, and strengthening our relationship within Latin America and the Caribbean, I, on behalf of all of our aviation ecosystem partners, your family, wish to pledge our full support. May your visit here be both productive and enjoyable. And yes, Jose, after tomorrow's session, you can change from your coach suit into your swim trunks. We look certainly forward to your return with your families and your friends multiple times with the plural of the Bahamas. Ladies and gentlemen, we are a proud nation. But our greatest pride is not in the beauty of our diverse product, but really in the beauty of our people. Persons like our most distinguished Prime Minister, the Honorable Philip Edward Brave Davis. Politically, he's the fifth serving Prime Minister in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and one who history would record as being among the most impactful leaders in our nation's 51 years of independence. Professionally, he's regarded as one of the most distinguished members of the legal fraternity and serves as a member of His Majesty's King's Council. Professionally, personally, our Prime Minister, to me, serves as a father figure. He serves as a formidable influence in my life, and I'm proud to not only refer to him as my Prime Minister, I'm proud to also refer to him as a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you would please stand and receive at this time with remarks the Honorable Philip Edward Brave Davis, Member of Parliament, King's Council, Prime Minister, Minister of Finance of the Bahamas.
Morning, and please be seated. Thank you, Dr. Roma. Kind introductory remarks, and thank you for which I now adopt. I was moved by the comments of the President of LATAM, CEO, in acknowledging the concerns that most vulnerable countries like ours in the Caribbean and in Latin America have in respect to the impact of carbon emissions and the role that the airline industry plays in that issue, and the recognition of that, and recognizing the biodiversity that the region has, and if you add seagrass to that diversity, though we are not as responsible for most of the emissions, our region carries the heaviest burden. And so I was pleased to see that acknowledgement, and I trust during the course of your deliberations, you will be discussing how assistance could be had from the industry in our move to decarbonization. And one way it's doing is participating in the monetization of carbon credits using these and as the asset, our biodiversities. Colleagues, in a country here, the Bahamas, where nearly 700 islands and keys are spread across vast stretches of ocean, and our ability to connect these islands relies on a robust aviation network. With 20 international airports, each serving as a critical gateway, the Bahamas depends on aviation not only to support tourism and trade, but also to provide essential links for our people to healthcare, education, and opportunities. This network is more than infrastructure. It is essential to our way of life. Yet, the challenges of maintaining this network are substantial, given our geographical makeup. Keeping each airport up to international standards requires extensive planning, investment, and commitment in the Bahamas. Every airport, whether it's a bustling or a small family island terminal, must meet the highest standards of safety, efficiency, and environmental responsibility. It's a serious challenge, but one we are committed to meeting, and over time, we have proven to be a model of resilience and success in this region. That's why it's an honor to welcome each of you here today, the Latin American and Caribbean Air Transport Association Forum. This forum provides an invaluable opportunity for us to share ideas, address our common challenges, and collaborate on ways to strengthen the aviation network across Latin America and the Caribbean. This gathering is especially meaningful as it aligns with our Bahamas Aviation Week, a time we use to recognize the progress and dedication that drive our aviation sector. Recently, our commitment was formalized in the launch of our National Aviation Strategic Plan, a clear framework designed to build a sustainable, efficient, and high-standard aviation sector that continues to meet the evolving needs of people and our region. In a country like ours, infrastructure is not just a convenience, it's essential. Our 20 international airports serve as lifelines, providing critical connections across our islands and beyond. Every airport, from Nassau's busy hub to smaller terminals on remote islands, must meet international standards while catering to the needs of its community. Our National Aviation Strategic Plan reinforces our commitment to maintaining these standards, ensuring that Bahamian aviation serves as a trusted and effective gateway to our nation. Infrastructure alone is not enough. It takes strong partnerships to sustain and improve our aviation sector. Collaborating with airlines, airport operators, and international aviation bodies allow us to stay aligned with industry changes and that support our goals. This forum reflects the importance of those partnerships, bringing together leaders to forge a connected, resilient aviation network that serves us all. Connectivity is the backbone of our economy and essential to daily life in the Bahamas. Our air routes don't only bring tourists to us, they ensure Bahamians can access healthcare, education, and opportunities. By enhancing connectivity within the Bahamas and increasing routes to international markets, particularly in Latin America, we strengthen our economy, support our communities, and open doors to opportunities. Our aviation network relies on skilled professionals to keep it running smoothly, from air traffic controllers to ground crew. These individuals are essential to our success. The National Aviation Strategic Plan emphasizes workforce training and development, ensuring that our aviation professionals are prepared to meet these demands and drive our network forward. Safety and security are at the core of everything we do. The Civil Aviation Authority of the Bahamas enforces rigorous safety standards, conducting audits and assessments to ensure a safe experience for every traveler. This commitment to safety strengthens the trust that visitors and residents alike place in the Bahamas aviation sector. In today's fast-moving aviation landscape, innovation is essential. We are integrating advanced technologies to enhance security, streamline operations, and improve the passenger experience. These innovations aren't simply about staying current. They are about positioning the Bahamas as a leader in regional aviation. As a nation heavily impacted by climate change, sustainability is more than a goal. It's a responsibility. Our incorporating renewable energy sources, adopting sustainable practices, and aligning with international emissions targets. This commitment ensures that our aviation sector operates responsibly, preserving the Bahamas for future generations. Today, each of you bring invaluable knowledge and experience to help us build a stronger, more connected network. We have the opportunity to make a real difference in how our region meets the demands of a complex, interconnected world. I want to thank you to our Bahamian aviation community and to each ALTA delegate here today for your commitment. I hope this forum offers meaningful insights and inspires new partnerships for the future of aviation in Latin America and the Caribbean. Friends and guests, I invite you to take in the spirit of the Bahamas, a place where the beauty of our islands is matched only by the warmth of our people. While you're here, discover for yourself why we work so hard to make this nation a model of resilience and connection. Enjoy our sun, our culture, and the hospitality that makes the Bahamas truly. And when it's time to head home, I hope you leave not just with new insights and partnerships, but maybe with a little sand in your shoes and toes as a reminder that you'll always have friends waiting for you here in the Bahamas. And I trust that while you're here, you'll discover why it is said it is better in the Bahamas. Thank you. Please enjoy everything that our friends have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister Philip Edward Davis. Please, everyone, stand up when we say farewell and thank you for joining us and for your welcoming words. Thank you, everyone. You may take your seats. And now, to officially start the conference, it's my pleasure to introduce you to ALTA's Executive Director and CEO, José Ricardo Botelho.
Good morning, leaders. Good morning, everyone. Especially, where are you? And Dr. Homer, just to say that after many years, we did it. We did it, and we are very proud to be here in this beautiful island. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Philip Edward Davis, the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Commonwealth and of the Bahamas, aviation leaders, distinguished authorities, and friends, welcome. Today, under these vibrant skies of Bahamas, a place that both the serenity of its waters and the promise of distant horizons, we gather to celebrate the 20th edition of this forum. Being here is an important milestone for the association, and I want to start expressing our deepest gratitude again to Mr. Trace Cooper, CEO of Bahamas Air, and the Vice President of ALTA's Activity Committee for his steady support, warm welcome as hosts. Without your support and commitment to this conference, wouldn't have been possible being here. I would like to thank the Minister of Tourism, Investments and Aviation for its important contribution to the conference and support. Chester Cooper, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Tourism, Investment and Aviation of the Bahamas, Dr. Kenneth Homer. Thank you all very much. And also as well, I would like to thank you, the Executive Committee of ALTA that support us during this entire time to be here today. Thank you very much for you. More than 2 decades in which the ALTA AGM and Leaders Forum has served as the meeting point for aviation in Latin America and the Caribbean. Platform where some of the most transformative events in our industry have taken shape. This forum, now standing as one of the longest running in the region aviation history, has maintained its unwavering commitment even in times of uncertainty, like during the pandemic time, when the whole world stood still, but we pressed forward, knowing that aviation is the heartbeat that keeps our region alive. 20 years ago, in 2004, aviation in Latin America and the Caribbean carried about 100 million passengers. Today, that number is to over 360 million passengers. A clear demonstration of our industry's impact on millions of lives, connecting families, creating jobs, and opening doors to the new economic opportunities. This growth isn't a coincidence. It's the fruit of a sustained and intensive collaboration where each of you here today, each leader today here, has played a vital role. Throughout these 2 decades, ALTA has been a powerful catalyst for aviation industry progress, fostering collaboration with governments, opening dialogues, breaking down barriers, and building bridges that enable a stronger and safe aviation sector. ALTA has highlighted the challenge of excessive litigation in the aviation sector, which often results in decisions that compromise its development and competitiveness. This organization has been active in challenging counterproductive regulations and has promoted efforts to establish a more suitable regulation framework that favors sustainable growth of responsible aviation in the region. Through its initiative, ALTA seeks to foster an environment industry can thrive and better serve our country's development. Thanks to these efforts, we have worked to educate stakeholders about conditions affecting operating costs, the impact of improving airport infrastructure, and how to advance in creating a more competitive environment for our industry. In fact, at this very forum, we are launched the competition index, as mentioned by our president, Roberto Alvo, a tool that analyzes and compares the conditions impact the cost of flying in our region, allowing us to identify key areas for progress and improvement. And for that, I would like to take the opportunity, Mr. Mateo, that is here, to use that in your country and see the results. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, sir. Our region continues to face some of the highest operating costs worldwide, and the need to improve airport infrastructure remains urgent. Moreover, the growing demand to reduce carbon emissions calls us to act decisively, adopting technologies and advancing to use of sustainable aviation fuel known as SAF. As our Executive Committee President just stated, our region needs its own roadmap, one that is aligned with our country's context and needs. Moving beyond these challenges, we are joining forces to promote the inclusion of more women and young people in technical and leadership roles in aviation. Initiatives like our Girl with Go scholarship programs, which support women in developing careers in aircraft maintenance, clearly show that together we can build a more diverse and inclusive industry, not just talking, but walking the talk. Today, I'm proud to say that ALTA has grown like never before, with 177 members, from which 51 airlines responsible for close to 9% of regional passengers traffic. Thanks to the commitment of airlines, manufacturers, suppliers, and many key players. This growth not only reflects our impact in the region, but also the trust that you all place in our mission. And for that, thank you very much. Thank you. Here at this forum, we are joined by the industry's most prominent leaders, top executive leaders. Airline CEOs manage the most complex challenges. Government representatives who have shown unprecedented openness to driving our industry to growth. And the visionaries who, with every decision, chart the future of air transportation in Latin America and the Caribbean. I want to express my deepest gratitude to all who have made this more than 4 decades of association and more than 2 decades of Leaders Forum possible. Thank you for your commitment, your vision, and your tireless work. Thank you for not giving up when the headwinds were strong, for believing in the power of collaboration, and for dreaming for a future where aviation continues to be a fundamental pillar of our economy and society. The opportunities before us are immense. ALTA, as always, will be here as the space where the idea converges, where consensus is built, and where the future is formed. Because together we fight and we will keep soaring higher every day. Thank you, and to the 20th ALTA AGM and ALTA Leaders Forum. Enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose Ricardo. We are now delighted to announce a special raffle placed during the event. By supporting the Girls with Goals scholarship program, you'll have the chance to win an incredible prize: 2 round-trip business class tickets with Turkish Airlines. How you participate: you need a minimum personal contribution of $200 to the programs through the contribution platform available at the website or by scanning the QR code on the screens. Contributions must be made by today at 8:45 p.m. And stay tuned, because the raffle will take place during the gala dinner tonight at 9 p.m. and we will be announcing the winner. So take this chance to support the future of women in aviation, and who knows, maybe win a special trip with Turkish Airlines. So good luck to everyone. And just to inspire you a bit more, we present to you the following video.
Hola, mi nombre es Pamela Bolaños, soy estudiante de Técnico en Mantenimiento de Aeronaves en el Instituto de Formación Aeronáutica. ¿Qué significa para mí la beca? La beca me va a ayudar mucho a reducir mis horas de trabajo para poder dedicarle mucho más tiempo al estudio. También me va a poder entrar a un curso en inglés, ya que es un idioma fundamental de la aviación, y así me va a poder preparar mucho mejor.
Mi nombre es Fiorella Agüero y soy técnico en mantenimiento de aeronaves en el Instituto de Formación Aeronáutica. Apliqué a esta beca porque estaba buscando un apoyo económico para poder concentrar más mi tiempo y obtener mis resultados en la parte académica. Me siento súper orgullosa y entusiasmada de tener esta gran oportunidad, porque así voy a poder mejorar el tiempo en la parte académica, los resultados y poder hacer mi práctica profesional.
Hola, mi nombre es Sofía Marín y pertenezco al programa de TMA de la Escuela de Aviación del Pacífico y fui beneficiada de la beca de Girls with Goals de la empresa ALTA. Más que una ayuda financiera, lo tomé como una ayuda para poder enriquecer mis conocimientos.
Mi nombre es Esther Pocasangre, soy estudiante de técnico de mantenimiento en el Instituto de Formación Aeronáutica. Yo apliqué a la beca debido a que me parece una gran oportunidad para poder continuar con mis estudios, y además me pareció muy importante ser parte de la iniciativa de ALTA para poder seguir desarrollando tanto estudiantes como profesionales en la industria aeronáutica.
And now we are ready to begin our academic agenda, and the first panel of this morning presented by CFM. In the area of rapid global transformations, including challenges such as sustainability, technological innovation, and changing passenger demands, CEOs will discuss the strategies that are shaping the industry. The panel will offer an insider's view of the trends and will, as well as address the main challenges and opportunities that will affect the airline market in the coming years. Please welcome moderator Gabriela Frias, CNN anchor, Tracy Cooper, CEO of Bahamas Air, Pedro Hebron, CEO of Copa Airlines, Roberto Albo, CEO of LATAM Airlines, John Rogerson, CEO of Azul, and Frederico Pedreira, CEO of Avianca. Welcome.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Perfect. Please be seated. Thank you. Good morning to you all. My name is Gabriela Frias. I'm delighted to be here in what I will call our yearly conversation, normally, with ALTA. How things are going, guys, and Tracy, it's good to have you in the panel, and it's great to be in the Bahamas. Yes, things are better in the Bahamas so far, so I'm delighted to be here. I'd love to expand more in the topic of sustainability, since the Bahamas is a great example of a place that can be affected by hurricanes. And coming from Mexico, we've had a dramatic hurricane effect in Acapulco, Mexico. So probably you can talk to us about how you build that resilience when you talk about being an example of resilience. But to begin with, let me connect you gentlemen with the video that we just watched. What's going on with female presence in the industry, in your companies, in your industry? What does it take to bring more along? And even one day, probably, a woman CEO standing here amongst us, sharing with us their own experience. What does it take? Let me start with Pedro in the corner. Good morning.
Okay, good morning. Creo que está bien. I don't know, this should work.
Hello? It's on.
Yeah, it's on, but
yeah, you just need to be louder like me, sorry.
I'm bad with old technology. And so IATA has a program or an initiative called 25 at 25. So by 2025, in certain key positions, like pilots, mechanics, etc., we should either have 25% women or grow by 25% from when the company started a few years ago. And we have our own program in Copa called Eleva, which promotes that goal. And I think we're very much on track. We're emphasizing in our recruitment women for our own mechanic academy. And also we are giving, I guess, more facilities for women to also enter our pilot academy. So in terms of pilots, we have one of the highest percent of women, which is above 10%. And we're making progress in mechanics, and we think we're going to reach those goals, those IATA goals. But of course, there's a lot of work to do in general, because that's only like a first phase. I think there are many more opportunities in our industry. So anyway.
Congrats. Yes, please.
I know this is a very dear subject to us as well. I think to the industry as a whole. In our case, I'm really proud to say that so last year we had the first class of female pilots in Colombia.
Oh.
So it was something that was really important for us, but also to tell young women, yes, you can. You know, if you want to be a pilot, just be a pilot. Along with that, we announced for the first time full scholarships for women in Colombia. So we have now 20 scholarships across the country in Colombia. And that's the first step. We want to take it to Central America. We want to take it to Ecuador. And just to finish, you know, for us is not just because we have to hit a goal, but it's a real pain for the business. We need more pilots.
Definitely from the piloting and from the management and from the structure, we have been a step above everybody else at this time.
Absolutely. Such an important topic in the region as well. Let me turn to the most pressing challenges that you're facing ahead. Because next year, lower growth is expected, GDP, in a region that has lost a decade because of the, you know, we're overdiagnosed, but we do little to become more efficient, more productive, and to just assure that, guarantee that growth is there. And that is improving lives for people, incomes for people. What has happened? I know a lot of people more people are traveling. A lot of people are sacrificing all their expenses to keep on traveling. We know that. When is that window of opportunity closing? And in the context that we're living, what is your strategy as airlines in terms of communicating to governments, hey, don't tax us the way you want to. Hey, you know, it's very expensive. This law for passengers is so expensive for us. Hey, we connect and we're part of the solution. We're not part of the problem. And this is a recurrent issue. I've been having the opportunity and the pleasure of talking to you CEOs. This is a recurring issue. So you have to keep, you know, evangelizing, educating, whether it's, you know, from the highest level to policymakers in Congress, et cetera. Who wants to start? What's your first concern, your biggest concern in, you know, the context that we're living, going into 2025? How do you plan to solve it?
Let me start.
Yes,
Thanks
Roberto.
So, hello?
Yes,
yeah?
You're on.
You know, we always complain. We talk about taxes. I just mentioned it. We talk about congestion. I think that we have failed to do one thing right. We've done it a few times in the past, but we're not consistent. We're not showing in numbers, in figures, exactly what the impact is. One thing is just to say it. The other thing is to demonstrate it. You know, this industry is amazing. The power it has, not only to connect, but also the expansive impact to the economy. And in some cases, you know, the poorest people, the one that need it the most, they have no alternative, particularly on faraway regions. And we talk about that conceptually. It's easy to say, but I think that we have not been good at showing numbers and explaining the impact so that public policies can be done with a technical basis. We do understand why some of these public policies happen, and sometimes it's for political, even populist reasons. And I don't think that we have been up to the task of putting in front of those conversations the technical arguments that allow that to be a little bit more balanced. Actually, what we want to do now with this regional roadmap in terms of the corporatization, I like it very much because it's a way of putting real technical data with arguments in front of policymakers to make sure that we change some of the course of these decisions, which honestly hampers not only aviation, I think the economy in general, and I think that us as CEOs have pending topics on that matter.
Do you agree, gentlemen?
I fully
Please.
agree, and I'll give you an example. In Colombia in particular, you know, data shows that, you know, airline tickets have dropped 9% year on year, right? But we continue to hear every single day from policymakers that our tickets are too expensive, right? And in general, in terms of the general opinion is that the tickets are expensive, but nobody talks about the fact that, you know, for a domestic ticket in Colombia, up to 28% of the final price are, you know, airport taxes and taxes as a whole, airport fees and taxes, 28%. For international tickets, it can go up to 60%. You know, after COVID, airlines are doing an amazing job in the region, and I look at my colleagues. You know, we're all doing a great job in terms of being more efficient, so we can put more people flying in our planes at a more accessible fare. But nobody's talking about, you know, the prices of airport fees in the region, you know, taxes. So I agree when Robert was saying we have to do a better job because we're doing our part.
Yes.
But when you look at taxes and airport fees, you know, there's so much to do yet to have more people flying in a region, you know, where flying is so critical for access.
I was going to add just, it's the word of mouth as well. It's not only the policymaker, but it's also the passenger, and the passenger has the immediacy of social, you have Twitter, X, you know, Instagram. So probably communication, I'm assuming you're talking about those both channels of communication, right? Go ahead.
Yes, and just to finish, and at the same time, we continue to see, you know, crazy projects saying that we need to regulate airfares, that it's better to regulate airfares when everybody knows that the regulation has been essential to the industry in order to grow passengers.
Yeah.
No, I would just say aviation is a force of good in the world, and I think many times, you know, we're criticized because of a delayed flight. You know, safety is our #1 thing. But I'll give an example. In Brazil today, there's one of the top engineering schools in the world, that there's a student there that relies on aviation for his next job at Embraer. or Boeing or anywhere else, right? And yet there's also somebody that sells cheese on the beach in the northeast of Brazil that also depends on aviation. It's the entire spectrum, right? And so I think, one thing that we did at Azul, we talk a lot about the judicial claims in Brazil, okay? In Sao Paulo, for example, 1 out of every 1,000 passengers sues the airline, right? Still very high, highest in the world. But there was a state in Brazil when 1 out of every 20 passengers was suing us. So what did we do? We stopped flying to this place, right? And then all of a sudden, it brought everybody to the table. Because the importance of connecting a city and the GDP growth in that city, and then the public opinion turned on the lawyers, right? The public opinion turned and said, wait a second, I don't have access to get to Sao Paulo anymore? And it's like, well, I'm not going to continue to operate when 1 out of every 22 people sues me, right, for a delayed flight for something that's outside of our control. And so I think we, as an industry, I think we need to be more vocal, and we need public opinion to be on our side, right? And so what happens is oh, you delayed your flight, you should be sued. It's like, well, hold on a second. If that means there's less flights, if that means there's less access, if that means that there's less middle-class people that can travel, all of a sudden, public opinion starts to change. And that's what happened. That's what happened in this area, and they said, wait a second. It got to the governor, it got to the federal government, and said, wait a second, we can't lose air service in these places. Well, if you want air service and you want more people traveling, more people using Uber, more people going to hotels, then let's have an open conversation about some of the pains that this industry has. Because if we do that, we all grow together and we all can prosper together.
And the other thing, next year, governments will need you. Passengers will need you. Forgive me for the yelling. Passengers will need you. So the challenge is just around the corner. Yes? So, Pedro?
Yeah. I can't talk much.
They don't want you to talk today.
No, it's too cold. It's too cold in the Bahamas. I'm like freezing.
No, right?
At least inside the convention center.
Inside, yes.
But well, I think Federico and then John said something that it's important, and is that I mean, in a way they refer to that the cities or countries that have better cost, lower fees and taxes are going to do relatively better than others. They're going to punch above their weight. They're going to have more traffic, more tourism, etc. So it's also their choice. We will adjust capacity to the reality of a market. It's easy for us to adjust capacity and shift those planes to other markets that are more in demand. So it should not only be us like fighting for something that we think makes sense, but it should make sense for those cities, those airports, to do it for themselves. And they're really good examples. Like Cartagena some years ago is an amazing example. They had like the highest passenger fees, departure taxes or fees, whatever, in all of Latin America. They lowered it by more than half, and traffic just took off. I mean, went through the roof in only a few years. And that's, of course, a destination that had some business, but also had the potential to attract a lot more tourism. And it was realized after they made that change. So, and I think Ecuador has been doing it lately. So we will probably see good results in Ecuador in the future. So it should be in the benefit of the city and the airport. We should not be the only ones pushing for those efficiencies. And again, we can move our capacity to other airports, to other cities.
Just a compliment, because I mean, I think we all agree of challenges, but what I think the conversation needs, in my opinion, to change from tit for tat. And because that example is like, all right, if you impose it on me, then I'm not flying, and then I'll show you what's the effect. I don't think that's the best way of approaching the situation. We need to be proactive. And how do we educate at the end of the day these people so that they don't come with these bad ideas at the end of the day? It's not good for us that we end up threatening in a way or showing the consequences afterwards.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but we had in the past examples where you've shown with numbers. You've been there, you've present with numbers, and sometimes not even the numbers are enough to convince them. Forgive me, Roberto, go ahead.
No, that's clearly the challenge. And at the end of the day,
Yes.
if you cannot convince them, you have to stop flying
Yes.
or doing something. But we live in this very special industry with flying is so important for so many. And for some of us, it's just a dream of doing it. And it's actually cheap. It's in many cases, it's cheaper to take a 500-kilometer flight than to get to the airport for that same flight. And I don't think that we have been there in the sense of showing that difference and how important it is. And it's a shame that we end up doing it by means of showing what happens when we don't do it, you see.
Yeah, Tracy Cooper, please.
Yeah, I just want to, perhaps on the converse side, just kind of explain some things more so than to defend. In the Caribbean, taxes on tickets, airfare, typically is around 36.5%. Not as high as you guys, but we're still up there a little bit. But in the Bahamas, for instance, Dr. Ruma, in his address, indicated that there were 18 international airports in one country, right? A country with only 400,000 persons. And so the economies of scale simply not there, which to sometimes garnish that from just the airfares alone. And this is a problem straight across the small island states within the Caribbean, where some of them are much lower than the 400,000 I'm talking about with the Bahamas.
Yes.
And so the governments, and where we don't have natural resources, et cetera, unfortunately have to rely on the taxation to keep the infrastructure improved. In other words, if some of them don't provide those taxes, you would not really be able to even fly in because the navigational and all of the other essentials for actually flying into those countries will not be there, or the funds will not be there to provide those means. So it's a bit of a situational difference that we're talking within the Caribbean, and you have so many of these small island states that unfortunately, when they all add together, they're depending on it, but when they all add together, then it becomes a bit of a challenge. But we're still looking in the Caribbean to see how we could address those things.
Thank you. And let me just link that to the bet of Bahamas Air. I mean, your destinations or the people interested in flying are from the US basically, mainly. But when you're trying to connect to the rest, you're talking about even Latin America, or the Caribbean, or even the Dominican Republic. How would you balance that situation with that goal?
Well, I'll start out by saying that even under the existing, I used just the Bahamas, and I think others have wrong. In 2023, we had a tourism population of about, or coming in, of about 7.2 million. In 2022. 2023, that jumped all the way up to 9.6 million,
yes.
Which is pretty much an astronomical growth. And all of that still happened with the tax structure and everything else in play. But as far as connectivity in around the Caribbean, it's been a really buzzword. Almost every conference we go to, we're talking about it. And we're trying to figure out how we could come together and do this a little better. The issue is that we have more flights into the Caribbean than in and around the Caribbean. It is almost a 2-to-1 structure. You have about 1,100 flights a year coming into the Caribbean in 2023, whereas in and around intra-Caribbean, it was only about 530. So it's a half, and even for seat availability, you had some 49,000 seats available coming into the Caribbean, whereas you only had about 11,000 intra-Caribbean. Now, to put it in perspective, you are talking about a lesser population movement, right, air population movement in the Caribbean versus then coming into the Caribbean, because tourism, the tourism product, obviously we have to sustain that. But we're starting to see some growth into Caribbean airline, for instance, out of Provo is doing a good job, and a few of the others. but it is still a bit of a challenge. How do we move around, given the economies of scale, the demand maybe not so much as so great?
Okay, let me move to infrastructure, but before I do, Pedro, it's interesting that COPA has also announced an alliance with the Agency to Promote Tourism in Panama, along with COPA. Is there enough infrastructure outside of the city of Panama to make it worth it for tourists in this important bet that the Panama government is doing alongside COPA Airlines, do you think, in terms of infrastructure and places to go in Panama? Can you explain a little bit? Can you describe that bet?
Yeah, so what we announced recently with the Tourism Authority and Promtur, it's like a revamp of a program that started some years ago, which is the free stopover, the Panama stopover, which has been done successfully in other countries, like Iceland, for example, and other countries. So it's been like rebooted and relaunched, and it takes advantages of the millions of passengers that transit through Panama every year, and it gives some of them the option to stay in Panama for up to 7 days without a penalty or an additional charge to their fare. So it makes a lot of sense for Panama. Panama actually has an improving tourism infrastructure. It's growing as a destination, and it can use a little bit more promotion, even though that's also on the right track. But again, this takes advantage of all the good things we have, combined with the passengers that are already transiting Panama. So it's like a win-win. It makes a lot of sense. Okay. And it's working.
It's working. Yeah, you wanted to attract 300,000 tourists, right?
This year should be around 150,000 by the end of the year. People taking advantage of the stopover.
Okay, and asking you if it also makes a lot of sense to you as CEO of COPA. By the way, the board of directors elected Pedro to succeed Mr. Stanley Mota, effective next July, right? July 2025?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, so our chairman is kind of stepping down as chairman.
Yes.
And remaining in the board.
Yes.
I will replace him as chairman, so be CEO and chairman, and I'll be executive chairman.
Yes.
That will be July 1st, and it's kind of more of the same.
Congratulations,
you know?
still.
It's not a big change.
Yes, exactly. You've been over 30 years at COPA. What I was going to ask if it makes sense to you is what President Mourinho reiterated. I mean, he announced it and then he repeated that he'll give in concession Tocumen's airport. Have you, as the airline, been consulted about it? What's your opinion about it? What do you think about it? Is this the right thing? Corruption practices have been cited by the president of Panama. What's the issue there?
Yeah. These guys want to answer questions. I think you should.
He always does that.
So we are involved.
You know him, right?
Yeah, we're very much involved, and it's a thought, it's an idea. It still has to materialize. There's a lot of work to be done. We need to find what works best for Panama. There are many examples of failed concessions throughout Latin America, so that's something Panama has to be very careful with. And Panama won't privatize the airport. That's like a bad word in Panama.
Yes.
So we are helping the government and the authority look for a better formula if there is such a thing. So there's still some work to be done. The idea is for the airport to remain very competitive, but also at the same time build a better product for the millions of passengers that use it.
Anybody wants to talk about it? No? What should be the good model for a concession of Tocumen, for example, the Hub of the Americas? Please.
I'm not going to talk about Tocumen. Right? But, you know, and when we talk about infrastructure, every time I say, my feeling, at least myself, is like we keep complaining. So I'll do it the other way around.
Okay.
Today, I'm going to give you a couple of success stories that we had this year, recently. And, so overall, yes, our vision is for all Latin America, the number of passengers have outgrown the infrastructure. And that's a reality in most, every country in Latin America. But, what we've seen is that if we work together, the airline, the authorities, and the concessionaires, we can actually, arrive to some success stories. And in our case, last year, we opened a new destination in domestic Colombia, Ipiales. That was hard work, again, between the three parts, the airline, the airport, and authorities. We just announced last week 2 more destinations in Colombia that it wouldn't have been possible if, again, government, airline, and the airport work together. So we're started flying to Quibdó and Arauca, right? And those are real problems. In Quibdó, we have an issue which is related to, there's actually seaweed in the platform. So we have to find a way to solve it. We have issues with, fire prevention. So my point is, I could stay 1 hour talking about all the infrastructure issues we have across our airports, or how we still have a bunch of big challenges in our main hub, Bogota, that, by the way, it was selected by AOG as the most connected airport in the Americas and number 20 in the world, right? And we're very proud of it. So,
you want to clap? Yes,
a little
please,
bit.
go ahead.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes.
Number 20 in the world, first in Latin America. But the reality is, we have to find solutions. And those solutions we're going to find not alone, but working with governments, working with airports, to start flying to new destinations that otherwise will not be possible. So just today, I'm going to be a little bit more positive and focus on that part.
John does Azul have a good example like that in the case of Brazil. And by the way, let me ask you, a lot of people talked about the possibility, and you know this, about the Chapter 11, which is a route that you didn't take. Mm-hmm. Why not? I mean, in the US it's a common thing. In Latin America, we struggled during COVID. Why not?
I think Chapter 11 is typically when you have something broken in the core airline. I think we have a strong core airline. I think we got ourselves in trouble with COVID and then devaluation of the currency. Yes. And we've got great partners, right? And so I think if any of them, there's a lot of people that have had experience with Chapter 11, but who ends up making money? Just go to New York and go to a law firm, go see an advisor, and that's where all the money goes. It doesn't go to your partners, it doesn't go to your creditors. And so, we felt like, hey, let's do something that's a little bit more creative and it's a better outcome for everybody. And that's kind of what we did. And so I think, but it all starts with having a great airline, right, that people want to support, right? So we didn't create COVID. We didn't create the devaluation of the currency. Those are things that kind of happened. And it's how you manage through that. And I think what happens, at least in the case of Azul, we have absolutely, fantastic partners. We got great people. I remember telling people that in the midst of COVID, when the U.S. carriers were getting bailed out by the government, right? We had 11,716 people took an unpaid leave of absence to save the airline, right? And so when I sit down with GE or Embraer or AirCap and my partners and say, hey, look at what I've done. 11,000 people took an unpaid leave of absence. I'm sure you guys can step up and help a little bit here, right? Because if we press that red button, you lose, these people lose. Let's just work on a more creative solution. And I think a sacrifice from everybody is much better than, at least in our case, obviously there's a lot of success stories. LATAM had a lot of success in it, and Avianca, and so it just wasn't the path that we chose. And so we chose a different path and kind of a path where we worked closer with our partners. But when you talk about Azul in Brazil, a little bit with what Fred is saying, there are roughly 100 cities in Brazil that only Azul serves, right? And so are there infrastructure challenges in Brazil? Absolutely. There are, but there's opportunities in Latin America. There are tremendous opportunities in Latin America, and I think we can continue to look for opportunities. And Roberto and I were talking the other day, sometimes the best health care in these cities is an Azul flight. right? Because they don't have the infrastructure. And when you talk about sustainability and helping people and, people leaving poverty, everybody should have access to health care. But if you're in a city, in a remote city in the Amazon region, and you have a health scare, the best thing to do is get them out of that city and get them to, Sao Paulo or someplace else. And so I think, I just want to kind of reinforce aviation as a force of good, right? When the COVID-19 hit, the airlines quickly stepped up and transported for free vaccines all throughout Brazil, right? That wouldn't have happened, and thousands of people would have died had it not been for the airlines. And so the airlines were essentially stopped, but actually spent money to distribute vaccines, around the world. So we need to be telling those success stories of aviation being a force for good.
And now there's another rumor. Yes, absolutely. And us in the media need executives who are willing, and all the ecosystem that made that possible. We need to see it so that we can also help tell those stories, because it's important for the region to show that with examples, to just tell how important your companies are for the entire nation. We don't have any trains. You are part of the solution. We just need someone who can, explain to us and to the viewer how that happened. But let me just stay a little bit with John. Maybe you want to talk about the Chapter 11, maybe not, in case you want to compare your cases. But John, there's also that rumor about GOL and Azul merger. Is it a rumor only? Is it happening? When will it happen? And how about the Brazilian authority? Do you think?
Nobody told you?
No, nobody told me. Tell me.
Maybe we'll talk after. No. No, I think you always have a responsibility to look at what opportunities exist in the market.
Yeah, that's the response that everybody would think you would give us, right?
But I think obviously there's conversations that are happening and
conversations are happening.
Yeah, I think it's natural for people in this industry to talk, and I think that happens. And
is the conversation also including the possible view of concentration?
I mean, I think, as I said, I think there's 100 cities in Brazil that only Azul serves, right? I think our overlap with LATAM or GOL is pretty minimal, right? It's less than 20%. But again, I'm not here announcing anything. I just we have a fiduciary responsibility to look at opportunities, and I think that everybody has that responsibility as leaders. Is it going to happen? Who knows? A lot of things. Are studied and never happen. A lot of things, happen. So we'll see. As of right now,
setting the record straight. That's it. Yeah. That's my job, to set the record straight.
The one thing I'll set the record straight. Somebody said that we were interested in Aerolíneas de Argentina. We don't even fly
that's
there.
True.
We don't even fly to Argentina.
And that's a question for you, gentlemen.
So that's Roberto's baby.
Where's the next frontier here? Is it Guyana? Is it Argentina? Because it's coming back, and with the government of Milei, it's very more attractive. Some people would say, maybe what you will be buying is still very complex in terms of culture, operationally. When you look at the next frontier for your operations, where are you looking at? Oh my God.
This region is underpenetrated. First of all, let's not forget there's huge amount of white space still in the industry, by 3.6 times in the last 20 years. Why not again in the next 20 years? So we're not going to expand geographically South America or Latin America. It is the size it is. I think that there's still a ton of opportunity. And countries like Argentina are coming from policies that I think hurt the industry significantly in the past. Now they have an opportunity to probably get attuned with respect to what most of us are doing. But the obvious thing for me today is just to expand this force for good, as John calls it. I like that term, even though, John, I think that we are a better safety service or medical service than you, but we can discuss it later over a beer. I think that's the most immediate task. But there's places like the Guyanas, as you talked. There's places in the Caribbean that are still very unconnected. Cities in Brazil, for sure. There's many cities in Peru, like Fred is saying, that still don't have airports that are capable of landing, twin jets, and that are relatively big. So big white space for me, at least.
You've been very general. There's nothing in your agenda, in your desk that you're looking at.
If I tell you, I'll have to kill you, so why?
But I can tell you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was just telling you that, after Chapter 11, for us, we come up with a philosophy that was actually Mike Switek's idea of, we have to go put ourselves out there and try new things. So our vision, if in every 10 routes that we tried, if there are 7 or 8 that works, we're happy. And we've been doing that, and we had a lot of good surprises. For this year, for instance, we're opening, just for the end of the year, we're going back to some destinations, we're opening others, we're going back to Chicago, we're starting Tulum for the first time, the new airport. Havana, you talk about Guyana's, we're trying our new flight to Georgetown for the first time. So our vision is there's a lot of opportunities, as Roberto and as John was saying, so we have to try and we have to take risks. And we're willing to, we won't get 10 out of 10, but we'll get 7 or 8 out of 10, and we're fine with that.
Tracy, please.
Yes, for the Caribbean, we see a great potential actually from Latin America. Sometimes we think all of these guys have to fly over the Caribbean to go where they got to go to. And somehow they've lost track of the fact that there's some beautiful islands that are sitting down there that they could stop into. I was talking with Pedro last night, and he told me, well, you need to get some Spanish branding in the Bahamas. I've taken that
there you go.
to heart. But I'll take the Bahamas, for instance. 80% of our tourism product comes from North America.
Yes.
And only about 5 or 7% comes from Latin America, even though Latin America is bigger in population than North America. So the whole thing with this, Bahamas has started the whole thing of how do we possibly, with a lot of Latin American carriers that are actually flying over us. And okay, if you don't want to stop in the Bahamas, perhaps we could take some of your people because we have mutual spots, Miami, Orlando, and the likes, yes. And that we could then expand that a bit. Obviously, we got to, know what the likes are for Latin American tourist product. But it is our challenge to see how we can get all of our good friends on the stage here to start stopping in the Caribbean a bit more.
You're listening, right? Yes, of course. Pedro, in the corner. What would you say?
Same question.
How big can Copa get, by the way? I mean,
Sorry.
How big can Copa get? And Argentina and Venezuela also. Let's talk about those markets as well. It's important for Venezuelans. Venezuelans are spread out the U.S., in Latin America. Where do you want to start?
Well, we're very predictable. We have a single hub, the hub of the Americas in Panama, and I won't get into a contest about which is the most connected hub. It's not important. It's not important.
Do it. You had to do it.
So we're very predictable. It's one single hub. We just try to do it better every year. Add destinations, add frequencies. We're not doing a lot of that right now because we're waiting for Boeing to deliver planes, and that's not happening right now. So when that starts again, we will continue strengthening our single hub of the Americas in Panama, and that will sometime, I hope, it should. So I'm optimistic, etc.
And Venezuela?
So anyway, Venezuela, I don't know, it's unpredictable. We were told like the 30th of July to stop flying the 1st of August.
Yes.
And then they did the same with Peru and the Dominican Republic. So Latam had to stop flying also. They haven't done it with Colombia because they're still hoping for Colombia to recognize them. It hasn't happened yet, but I guess they're still hoping. They don't want to close all the doors. And they need to be connected.
They do.
It really makes little sense to affect connectivity because it's affecting themselves. But, if I knew how they think and how they make decisions,
of course,
then, I would tell you more. But we go with the flow.
Yeah. Anyone else wanted to talk about? No? Okay. It's important also to discuss the fact that 2024, half of the world is voting elections. I don't want you to give me your political preference. That's not what I'm here for. I don't mean to do that, and you should not expect that from me. But definitely, policy making, it can be consequential for that. So let's talk about how you've seen it affect or not in terms of your expectation and what is needed in Latin America, but also you all fly to the US. What's happening in a couple of days? As CEOs of companies that require that relationship with the government and the policy making that is sensible and makes sense and is logical, what would you say for the region and then about the US? Who wants to start? I know it's a touchy subject and I know you're going to remain silent and no one wants to get the microphone, but please.
So I think it's a shame that I think most of every country in Latin America is growing less than what it could. And I think that's unfortunately because of the uncertainty, the populism, the political situation that we face in most of the countries where we operate. I remember that in the 90s in Chile, the discussion was about, do we grow 6 or 7%? And it was about 1 percentage point of interest rate to try to keep...
Our aircraft orders and our growth plans according to that. We try to never bet the house. And that's why we're probably the only, let's call it legacy airline or something in Latin America that survived the pandemic without help from anyone. No Chapter 11, no outside, well, no one got outside help, no restructuring, no nothing, and we came out of it stronger than before. And that's our philosophy, that's our business philosophy, and we'll be ready for the next downturn because that's how we manage things, how we think. We know that there will be a downturn, there will be a slowdown, and one needs to be prepared for that. That's just the way we do things. Everyone does things a different way. In terms of U.S. politics, I agree with Roberto or John that I don't think it will make a big difference in Latin America. And it's been a while since the U.S. paid attention to Latin America. It hasn't happened in many governments. There's a few initiatives right now that the focus on friendshoring, and there's the microchip initiative, where a few countries have been picked to receive some sort of support from the U.S. to produce microchips here, close to the U.S. So those are, I think, interesting developments. But I don't know, in a bigger way, there hasn't been a lot of focus on Latin America.
Totally.
And I think it will be smart to change that.
That'll benefit
policy.
you guys. That'll benefit your companies, definitely. Go ahead.
Definitely. No?
No, I was just going to add something about the U.S., which is, throughout all the year we've seen a strong demand of traffic to the U.S. And, one of the hot topics of U.S. right now and then the campaign has been illegal migration. And we don't talk enough about it, but, throughout this year, the airlines, along with IATA and ALTA, have done an amazing job working together with U.S. authorities, with CDP, to effectively, reduce drastically the issue of illegal immigration. If you looked 1 year ago, you would see these huge flows of passengers all across the world that were flowing through our networks into the United States. But that was another positive story where working together, we were able to address an issue where right now I would say in our case, it's a tenth of the problem that it was. So I'm also positive that, even for one of the hottest topic of the election, which was immigration, we were able to address it working with U.S., working with the airlines, IATA, and I continue to be optimistic about traffic to the U.S. looking forward.
Thank you, and thank you for your willingness to talk about this, because I know that it's a touchy subject. You're like, oh my God, what is she asking? Last but not least, I have to go back to Roberto, but I want the opinion of you all gentlemen. Decarbonization, the SAF, all that conversation, the MIT study, now the research that is going to be carried out by ALTA. Roberto, you've talked about this for over a year. What has happened in the last year in the region in regards to that? And also, are all of the airline CEOs in agreement of what the strategy should do? Of course, the region has different countries, different needs, but the most viable strategy according to your own operations, have you sat down and talked to you all and make consensus about one strategy, two, three strategies, the best ones for the region or not?
So first, I think, and this is a conversation that is happening and will happen. So I don't think that there's a point today in thinking that we're not going to have to face it. It will come. The question is, how do we do it? How do we do it right? And many people can say, listen, I mean, it was the developed countries that put 90% of the CO2 in the atmosphere, and here we are in Latin America, which is much less developed, suffering about it. And I think it's true. And I think that that has to be part of the conversation. But I think that the only way we're going to be able not to be averaged down by policies that are made in the developed countries that try to equate us to what they do is by doing what we're trying to do here, which is take a look exactly of what happens in our industry, what are the impacts in our part of the world, and how do we develop our own path that takes into consideration the particularities of Latin America. We are poor economies, so many places misconnected. 80% of the people in this industry have never taken a plane. And imagine the social benefit and impact of that. So we have a very delicate balancing act between moving towards decarbonization, but not make it in a way unaffordable, particularly for the people that need it the most. And we talk about SAF, and I think everybody understands that SAF is important, but this is a region that has the ability to produce how do they call it? Carbon services or environmental services. One of the most, actually the only CORSIA project today that has been approved by ICAO is today in this part of the world. So I think we have the opportunity to make out of this something that is good for the region, good for the world, but if we just hide our heads below the earth, it's going to come upon us in a way that is not going to be good for any of us. So I'd rather take it face on, but also take advantage of, wonderful group of people that we have here that know a lot and that can make this impact to be more balanced vis-a-vis what is important for the societies.
John?
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Roberto said. I also think we need to, we need to play offense and not play defense. All right? And one of the ways of playing offense is we can put SAF in the aircraft tomorrow at 1% in Brazil, great, but we also have the youngest fleet in the world, right? And so we're already, in our carbon footprint, Roberto shared this yesterday at our ALTA executive meeting, is down 30% over the last 10, 15 years, something like that, right? And so, that's what's happening. And today, in Latin America, jet bridges still don't have power and air conditioning, right? So let's focus on what we can do today as opposed to focusing on what could be done in 2050, right? I think there's so many improvements that we could do today, and we've invested collectively billions and billions of dollars in next generation aircraft because fuel already in Latin America is the highest in the world. It's already the highest in the world. And so when you think of SAF being 3-4 times more expensive, you need to have an industry that can decarbonize. And I'm afraid that if you go down this route too fast, you're not going to have an industry. You're not going to have people that can travel, right? Because it becomes prohibitively expensive. And so I think we need to focus on what can we do in the short term, and that's, flying next-gen aircraft in the region, that's, fixing air traffic control, that's having more power at jet bridges. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do very, very short term. That's also good business. But, I agree 100% with Roberto. It needs to be different in Latin America, and I think we're very aligned on that. And so we're not ignoring it, but I think there's a lot of other things that we can do in the short term that will benefit the environment.
Well, for the Caribbean, really, you go and you talk to the fuel providers and you say, hey, what about SAF? And some of them ask you what that is, They're not even following closely. And they know about it, but they're saying that it's really unobtainable, that they really can't get their hands on it. And so, yeah, when you see that the major countries and authorities making decisions that are based on what they can do, and they're leaving out all of the others where we can't, it becomes a problem. Obviously, yeah, we could go to younger airplanes, and in the Caribbean, we've done that as well. Caribbean Airlines and Cayman and all the rest of those are flying the latest and greatest, best carbon controlling engines. But the reality is that it is not something that is straight across the board. This is definitely weighted by those that have the say and probably even have the ability. And they're not looking generously on us that are kind of suffering in the meantime, simply because we don't have domains. Our Prime Minister spoke this morning about the fact that we're countries, and in the Bahamas, a country that does not even contribute that greatly to the carbonization that we see, but yet we're so adversely affected. So we want to see the reduction of this, because the hurricanes and everything else that we see, that hurricanes now, which used to take a week to establish themselves, going from being a tropical storm to a category 4 and 5 overnight. So these are phenomena that we have to see a reversal on, and somehow that are being affected by climate change. But it has to be done in a way where it doesn't bury the low guys like ourselves.
Thank you. Before we go over time, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say something. I'm being very short, and we're very passionate about it, but when we discuss the subject, our view is that we have to be fair and realistic. Fair, Roberto and John said it, today, United States and Europe, they fly 4 to 6 times more than Latin America, if you look at penetration. Not only that, but when they travel, they can choose between a plane, between trains, between amazing road infrastructures that we don't have in Latin America. Most of the times, we have a plane, a boat, and that's it. So number one is it has to be fair. Moreover, most of the planes in Europe, Latin America, they're older than our planes in Latin America. So they're much less efficient than others. So the first one has to be fair. And 2, realistic. And realistic is at what cost are we willing to make that transition, when we know that it will directly impact the access of people in the region and development of the economy in the region. So fair and realistic.
Thank you. Pedro? Okay, we didn't go over time then. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm hoping that the next time we meet, you figured out that better communication, as you acknowledged, that needs to improve so you can be more successful than what you are already. So thank you for your time. Thank you. No?
Que suba.